Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just wanted to add one line from the introduction perspective. I'm currently working as a security manager in Accenture, and most of the stuff that I have done so far, I've been involved in the community from last 13 years now, participating in the webinars, giving some kind of talks in OWASP. I was also a member and the speaker in OWASP Germany. And currently my day-to-day looks like I'm a manager by day and I white hat at night. I start always when it's dark, I just jump into the programs just to find some security vulnerabilities, just to make the safe web. And also just a hint that while I was preparing for this session yesterday only, I think day before yesterday at late night, I found a security issue in Google Cloud. And that was something I reported. And thanks for providing me this opportunity to be a part of the speaker in this session, because of which I could, dig into the issues in Google Cloud. And also that has been accepted and acknowledged by Google Security. So being said that, now I'll just move to the next part. I'll talk a bit on the agenda, what we have for now, and also on how I'll try to, take it up in the next slides. So the first intent here is, what is the purpose of having this topic? If you look at the cloud security, we have been working in the cloud from last couple of years now. A lot of things are changing. We have multiple cloud service providers who are helping the businesses grow, and also making sure that the businesses and the companies are following the right best practices. But if someone is asking a business, right, why you are not moving to the cloud, that is also another factor which contributes in making sure that a business is shifting towards the cloud without having any much knowledge in terms of the security. From a survey perspective, the total around 80% of the businesses that we have in IT online as of now are in the cloud, but still we are lacking in terms of the security when we are looking at the overall security posture of these companies. So the idea here is not to rapidly shift to the cloud, but making sure that we are also including security as a part of the best practices, and also evolving day to day, but not just shifting everything from on-prem to the cloud, and keeping security maybe at the end of the cycle or at the end of the phase. So the key learnings that I'm expecting all the audiences will have from this session is, what are the basic cloud security challenges that are being faced by the businesses? How to understand the critical role of the cloud security. At some point of time, I guess most of us who are in this call, they would have faced some challenges, right? When you are explaining these things to the C-level guys, or when you're explaining these things to the clients, we have to convince them that security is something they should not compromise at. We should make sure that security is always counted since the start of any of the business whenever you are migrating from on-prem to cloud. And how we can prepare for the threats that are coming in cloud security. If you look at the recent threats, every day we have something new coming up. It might be from a cloud security provider, a kind of misconfiguration in terms of IAM that was from CSP. Now it's also impacting the businesses. Those are actually working on those clouds. And also we'll have some kind of real world case studies of how cloud security should be implemented. And also if it's not done in the right way, what might be the impact of it. So this is what is the purpose of this seminar today. And before I go to the next part, I would just like to understand the audiences. I just want to understand which domain of cybersecurity you guys are from. We can have someone from AppSec, someone from Red Team, someone from GRC or security testing and all. So I just start this live poll just to understand the audience, and then we are good to go on to the next part. So just a moment, please. Okay. That's it.
We started for you, Kamal.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. So I can see a lot of guys coming in from GRC and also IAM, AppSec, CloudSec. I'll just try to put it on the screen so that all of us can see. So now, and I think that is the beauty of having these seminars, because right now all these things, I mean, I might have missed out some of the modules as well, sorry for that, but most of the things that we have on the plate right now in terms of the security segments, all of them are actually acting as a building pillar for cybersecurity. If you start from AppSec, we have secure code review in place. The guys who are doing hands-on coding, teaching the developers how to do the right code. They're doing the SAST and DAST. From network security, we have the guys who are taking care of the whitelisting of the IPs or looking at the firewalls and all. And if you look at all the modules here, these all are actually acting as a pillar for the cloud security posture. And I can see we have some of the guys from Red Team, and that is one of my favorite topic actually. And good to see we have someone from that part as well. So that's really great. I can see we have a mixed flavor of all the audiences, so it looks pretty good.
GRC is the highest.
Yeah, GRC is the highest. So great. So now I think we are good to move to the next part. I got a kind of clear vision on where we are, and also
Okay, we will end the call.
Sure, thanks a lot. Perfect. So moving to the next part now. This is what I have on the agenda part. If you look at it, we have everything from start to scratch. If I want to go to the client, I want to convince him, I want to make sure that security is not something that should be taken up at the end. This is something what I need to do first. I need to make sure that I'm signifying the importance of cloud security. It can be to the client or it can be to the business as well. And how we can do that? We can only do that once we understand the cybersecurity risks that is coming up from the cloud security, if that is not in place. The third topic would be responsibility model. This is something that is a very huge topic, and I'll also be try to make it more interactive by giving some real life examples of what I have seen so far, and also you guys will be able to relate to those things as well. And then we have something on the cloud security strategy. This is something what GRC will also be contributing at and looking at it from their perspective. Then we have a topic on IAM. This is something I think most of us already know, but yeah, there are some do's and don'ts of IAM which we also be aware of. And then we have something from the audit and assessment, and then compliance, and the list is pretty long. I'll try to cover it in a easy way so that a guy who is from GRC is able to understand some concepts from red teaming as well, and vice versa. So moving to the next part, the first topic that we have is importance of cloud security, right? So like I said in the beginning, a lot of businesses are now rapidly moving to the cloud. And that is also creating some kind of bottleneck for the security part as well. Because shifting to the cloud is one thing, but making sure that we are shifting securely from on-prem to the cloud is something we should consider. And with that, we are also giving a lot of space to the cyber attacks, which are actually ongoing. That also includes some kind of cyber threat landscapes, which we are actually growing when we are migrating from on-prem to cloud. That also includes the PI data for the customers, which is at risk. But the benefits of the cloud that we have, which the businesses are more focused on, is scalability, flexibility, and cost effectiveness. And we have to ensure that the importance of cloud security is intact. And this is something which also should be added as a part of the key points when a company or a business is migrating to the cloud. And now we'll move to the next part. So I'll just play a short video to you guys, and I think it will give you some kind of more clarity on what we are looking at right now. And please let me know if the audio is not there. I hope it should be there, but
cloud security is crucial for protecting sensitive data from unauthorized access and cyber threats, which have become increasingly prevalent as organizations migrate to the cloud. By safeguarding personal, financial, and proprietary information, businesses not only comply with regulations like GDPR and HIPAA, but also maintain customer trust and their reputation. A robust cloud security posture ensures business continuity, enabling organizations to respond effectively to incidents and minimize downtime. Additionally, understanding the shared responsibility model between cloud providers and customers is essential in managing security effectively, allowing organizations to adapt to evolving threats in a rapidly changing digital landscape.
Yeah. So this was something I thought to add so that it will summarize, the juice, the cream that we have from cloud security, and also it will give you some kind of insights on what we are going to see, and also what might be the impact of the things if these security postures are not in place. In the next part now, we already discussed about the importance of cloud security, but here are some numbers which will give you more clarity on why we should have these things in place. Around 76% of the enterprises are now using multiple cloud providers to enhance their services. This is true. I think you would have also seen in your company, multiple vendors are there who are actually working as a CSP like Google, Amazon, or Microsoft. Around 30% of the businesses have transferred over half of their workload to the cloud. And this is something what we have been seeing on the day-to-day part. If there is a breach coming up on any of the CSPs, it's actually having an impact on all the businesses. Those are actually, collaborating with those vendors. So CSP is also something what we should consider looking at the history of the CSPs, the cloud security providers, how much impact these CSPs had in the past from a breach perspective. What was their countermeasure to do take care of these things in the future? And the security challenge is something which is ongoing, and we cannot be sure that a business that is totally running clean today might not be impacted by database, in coming days or weeks. So the idea here is to rapidly shift to the cloud services, but with having those security things, security concerns in place, which require attention. That might be something with the configuration part, something with the data security, compliance, or whatever. Yeah, all these things are actually covered in the kind of security challenges that we might face when we are not having the cloud security in place. Business continuity is also one of the major factor, because a company will not be able to survive if their business is not running on the cloud, right? So making sure that if any security incidents are coming up, how we are tackling it from a downtown perspective. Are we bringing down all the servers, or we have some way out to at least give some data access to the customers without having any impact on the PI data that is being getting leaked or disclosed? So this is what we have from an importance perspective. Now I'll be talking a bit on understanding the cloud risks. And this is what I said is also one of my favorite topic, just to look at it from a hacking perspective or maybe from a threat perspective, just to see how we are, understanding the cloud security threats, because we don't want to be dependent totally upon the CSP, but rather give some inputs from a business perspective as well. That we'll be covering in the next slide that will be coming up as a part of the responsibility model. So we have multiple cloud security threats that are associated with the cloud migration part. The first and foremost is the data migration, which comes with the data migration data breach. And that is something unauthorized access to the data of any of the customers. It can be by any vulnerability that came up from an insecure code, or it can be something that came up from a misconfiguration that was done on the cloud. Then we have some issues that might be coming up from account hijacking or insecure API or DOS attacks and all. So if you look at the overall structure that we have from a threat perspective, around 45% of the breaches are actually cloud-based, because most of the businesses are now on the cloud. And this also means that we are totally depending on the cloud from a CSP perspective, making sure that the configurations are rightly given to us. And also we are following the best practices of the cloud that are given to us from the cloud security vendors, or maybe from some organizations like OWASP, SANS, and all. Around 80% of the companies, they have reported cloud security issues last year. And that also means that the companies or the organizations that are moving to the cloud, they are facing a lot of challenges, going into the cloud or making sure that they are surviving in the cloud in the right way. Increasing the public cloud incidents is also one of the hot topic right now. In last 1 year, we have seen around 10% to 27% reported public cloud incidents, which gives us some kind of vulnerabilities that are associated with the public cloud services, which require immediate attention. It can be anything that came up from Azure, because if I'm getting an issue or a vulnerability in Azure, that is actually counted as a CVE, because it will have an impact on multiple businesses. Those are actually, using Azure as a platform. And that is the reason a single issue can have an impact on the broader audiences, because most of the companies are actually using those products and are relying on the security frameworks that are given to them by the CSP. So look at these are the numbers that we have from a data breaches perspective. Around 50% of the breaches that occurred due to the misconfiguration part. We'll be talking more in the misconfiguration in the upcoming slides, how and why we have such issues coming up, and how we can make sure that we are not actually prone to these data breaches issues from misconfiguration. And we have insider attacks as well. That means if access controls are provided not in a right way, then we might end up with having some insider attacks as well. So a live example of this would be having the least privileges in place. We should not give admin accesses or maybe the owner rights to each of the colleagues, but it should be given to the right guys, and we should start with the least privileges whenever possible and required. The DOS attacks have also increased, which have been targeting the cloud services, which are actually impacting a lot of businesses because of engaging the traffic, providing some kind of DOS to the systems, and overloading the servers, which is actually impacting the businesses and the resources along with the customers who are using these things. So we have around 74 million multi-cloud vulnerabilities. This is the data that we have from CVE portal, and if you look at it, we have a lot of vulnerabilities which are there, and most of them are also not remediated by the businesses. So that means even if the cloud is insisting them to take care of these things by some automation or some tooling perspective, businesses are still focusing on the business plans, keeping these things as a part of the backlog. I hope you guys will be able to relate to this part, and making sure that maybe in the next release they'll be taking care of these remediations, because as of now they don't have enough bandwidth or enough cost to take care of these things. And that is something what is pretty bad, because from a security perspective we should always make sure that security comes first, and definitely business should also be there, but security should be the one who is driving the businesses along with the customers. So these are the numbers that I have from 2021, and this was something from a public database for Facebook. Around 530 million customers' data was breached. It was from a data scraping technique that was done by a hacker, and I think Facebook was also penalized for this from US government. In the same year, we had around 700 millions data of the LinkedIn users that was scrapped from LinkedIn. And all these came up from all these issues came up from the publicly accessible buckets which were there without having the right access controls in place. So these are some significant numbers I thought to share, just to make some importance on this topic, and just to give what might go wrong if these configurations are not in right place. So in the next part now, before I would move to the next topic, I would just like to understand your point of view. How do you approach shared responsibility in the cloud? Or if I try to rephrase in a different way, what roles do you assign to your cloud providers, and what responsibilities do you retain yourself being the business? If anyone in the audience would like to answer this,
Kamal, I'll run this Q2 poll now. Same poll we can run. Okay, I'm going to launch that.
Yeah,
are you able to see? This one, correct?
No. So as of now, I have a question on the screen, and the polling part will be, I think, after 4 slides. So this was something what I thought to add, just to understand the perspective. So if anyone from the audience would like to answer this, can please raise your hand. And so I can see Nagesa has raised his hand. Okay, so can you please unmute them?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot.
Hey, hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Raghavendra. Okay, I see this question like, how do you approach for the shared responsibility in the cloud? I hope you are referring to the public cloud here or a private cloud.
Correct. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, it's up to you. It's up to you. I
Yeah,
mean, we
if
can
I am
consider any one
thinking
of them.
of a public cloud where multiple clients or customers are there, then the service provider is equally responsible, and the customer has to take also a certain audit so that they can find any loopholes, and that's the way that I feel it. The second part
Yep.
of the question, what roles do you assign to your cloud provider? So definitely it will be based upon what sort of when we are providing, I mean, when we are storing information in the cloud, generally we need to give them the complete read, write, edit options as well. And at the same time, you will maintain certain logs from in-house and also at the same time from their side too, so that on a monthly basis you can have a review as well.
Yep.
Or
Yeah.
you can have a PAM system as well.
Mm-hmm.
Privilege access management, which tracks, monitors completely of the information, which is done from the both the sides. I mean, from the cloud provider side, not both the sides. And you can compare your data as well. That's my answer. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's pretty much what I was looking for. Thanks a lot. I can see a few more hands. I'll take one more answer and then we will move to the next
We
part.
have said over to you. You can talk now.
Sure.
Yes, sir. Definitely, I will go with the RBAC, and it's a role based. We can assign it to we can give permission to the cloud provider, and at the same time, I would like to keep my data in house, like a copy of some sort of um, um, like syncing system where I can have my database in like on premise, apart from having a copy in the cloud as well, because I've seen a couple of difficulties with a couple of customers having their difficulty accessing their data over the cloud, and performance issues and data security issues. So this is totally from my side. I will concentrate on the data, core data, database, or very important data like restricted data, financial data, HR data should be like based on premise.
Yeah, I mean, that was really interesting just to understand this stuff from the data part as well. Yeah, so definitely, yes. I mean, these are the few points that we should consider. And I mean, the reason why I thought to bring this question here, if you remember, like a decade back when we started in the IT, right? And most of the guys who are here, they can connect with me on this. So we had a couple of issues when a business is working with multiple vendors, when we did not even have the cloud, right? We were working with some third-party vendors who were providing some kind of data, or even if you are working with some client teams as being a developer or maybe from a security team or any other teams, right? So the collaboration part, that was the biggest challenge, and still I think that is the biggest challenge what I see still in the organizations. And most of the time, the teams are having an attitude like it's not my cup of tea. So in simpler words, this is something what is not owned by me. I'm only here to take care of do my job. Maybe it can be coding or it can be testing, and the data that is coming to me, I don't even care what that is because I'm expecting the third party to take care of these things, right? And that's why in cloud we have a shared responsibility model, which suggests that everything that we have in the cloud it should be responsibly owned. And that means whenever we are starting the migration part, we should have a clear picture of what all things should be owned by the cloud and what all things should be owned by the business. I think most of us already know these terms, but I'll
Kamal,
just
you want to take one or two answers? Probably I will enable Raghav.
okay. So we can have them as well. I can see there are a few more hands.
Raghav
Yeah, sure,
will
we
throw
can have
some
them.
interesting question. Raghav, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Raghav Rachuri. I'm working as a consultant. You're able to hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My answer would be that though some of the service providers themselves provide what are the areas they take care and what areas the customer has to be responsible.
Yep.
But again, these things have to be clearly defined in the service agreements.
Correct.
What areas are your responsibilities lie, and what are the shared responsibilities has to be clearly defined, and which areas are the corporate responsibilities, and which areas are the service providers responsibilities have to be defined and understood clearly by both parties. Because many times there are the service provider will be having another third party who is providing some services. So this is quite challenging. So these things have to be clearly defined when we are getting into the agreements, where the SOAs have to be clearly defined.
Right.
Service level agreements have to be clearly defined.
Correct. So to summarize it, from a regulatory perspective, all these things should be added in the contract. Because in future, if something goes wrong, we should know what was owned by whom.
I come from a banking background, which is very typically very well defined. These things are very clearly defined because of the requirements, very stringent requirements. So this is very clearly discussed and understood and then defined in our contracts itself. Because the banking services are very have to be very stringent.
Right, that's true. So thanks a lot for your inputs. Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. I've also worked intensively in a banking domain in FS, and also that's pretty clear that we need to take care of these things.
Oh, that's great.
And if you're talking about some EU region and all, then we also have some more, more regulatories that are coming up, like GDPR and all. But I think that's pretty clear that right documentation is the correct way.
Because regulatory requirements are very clear in terms of data residency, and also how the customer support has to be managed and all that.
Correct.
So thanks. We'll go to Nagesh now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the other members already answered. The main thing is that IAM, how we manage.
I think you went on mute, or I can't hear you now.
Am I audible?
Yes, now you're clear.
Yeah. So what I was saying, the very important role plays is access and privileged access management. Basically, if you look at the previous 6 months incidents in cloud, what are the security incidents that happened, and what are the root cause behind the security incidents? Most of the security incidents directly or indirectly related to access management, or misusing the privileged accesses, or cross-site scripting.
Yep.
So I think as a part of shared responsibility, as a users, it is very important to manage user access management in a systematic way, without any loopholes. I think that is one thing which we need to take care.
Yeah, I think that's on the right spot, because IAM is something what we need to consider, and that is something what I'll be covering now in the next slide. So
just one more request. You can give your experience and also give some guidelines about generally how these are arrived at.
Sure. So do we have some more answers coming up, or should I continue?
No, actually,
we have one or two. Yeah. Yeah, Nagesh, go ahead. What you were saying?
Yeah, actually, we wanted to listen from the host. What are the best practices as a shared responsibility we need to follow?
So now we'll be moving to that part. At first, I just wanted to understand the audience's point of view, and I think most of the things have already been covered by you. Now we'll move to the next part in the same segment. We'll move to the next slide now. So if you look at the responsibility model, right? I mean, it's just a framework that defines what all responsibilities from a security perspective should be owned by the CSP, that is cloud security providers, and also the end customers, that is the businesses. So the responsibility of the cloud service providers would be infrastructure security, making sure that their cloud infrastructure is secure, The service availability is one of the things. I think this was something what was also mentioned by one of the members in the questionnaire. And then the compliance and governance. Compliance and governance is pretty clear. If I want to have a private cloud that should reside in the EU because I don't want to play with the GDPR, the cloud provider have to make sure that he is giving me an instance that is lying in the EU region, right? It's not outside EU. And that is something what is called as a bond of trust. But to have these things in place, we should have the right documentation, which was mentioned by another colleague, another member, to have these things as a part of the contractual terms. Now, what comes to the customers? The customers have to make sure that the data they are having is protected. The data is encrypted. That is something what should be done by the customers, by the businesses, and the access controls. I think these two points were already mentioned by one of us. IAM is something what we should consider, definitely looking at it from a user access perspective, and also creating separate policies or groups depending upon which cloud service provider we are using. And then we have an application security part, which is also one of the most important factor, making sure that the developers are rightly trained in terms of secure coding, they are following the best practices and the guidelines, and the applications that are deployed in the cloud are secure and also regularly updated. So when I say updated, that means we might have a vulnerability that might be lying in one of the dependencies that is being used in the code. If you remember, 2 years back, we had a Log4j incident in November 2021, right? And that was pretty huge. It has had an impact in a lot of businesses, and a lot of downtime was there because of it. So the right attitude to update these libraries in the right manner is also something what should be owned and done by the businesses or the customers. And the clarity should be there to understand what all security gaps are there. If let's say we have an issue in Google Cloud, right, or maybe in Azure, that is coming up from CSP, then the vendor should be transparent enough to the customers to explain to them what is the issue from their end and what is the right version which should be updated now by the customers. So the bond of transparency should also be there. It should not be something like, okay, I have an issue on the vendor part, but I don't want to highlight this because this might have an impact on my stocks or maybe on the market or other things, right? These things should be channelized very transparent, in a transparent way. I'll play a short video just to give you some more insights on this, and then we'll talk a bit more on this topic.
Cloud service providers offer compliance frameworks, but customers must ensure their own compliance. Adhering to regulations like GDPR and HIPAA is crucial to avoid legal issues and build trust. Implementing security measures such as encryption and regular audits helps mitigate risks. Maintaining compliance is essential for safeguarding cloud environments and ensuring comprehensive cybersecurity.
So this was the stuff, what I wanted to highlight. What all things should be done by the customers and also what all things should be done by the cloud providers. If you look at this model here, the iceberg that we have in the picture is the business that is floating on the cloud, and the ocean is the cloud, right? And the responsibility is, if I want to go to the cloud, I have to make sure that the data production, the data that is at rest or it's on transit, it's owned by me. The application security part that comes in terms of the secured coding or deploying the application is also owned in the right way, is owned by me, by the business. The compliance is one of the things that we already talked about. And then we have IAM, making sure that the policy configurations to control user access is also owned by me. And we might have a lot of businesses who are actually acting as an iceberg, who are floating on the cloud, but they are not actually taking care of these things. So definitely it might, not be a good idea for them to survive in the long run. So this is something what I thought to bring up to give a wider picture of how this responsibility should be shared between the cloud providers and also with the business. Okay, and so just to sum it up, if you look at this, we have the different responsibilities. The data protection, the IAM, AppSec, and the compliance should be owned by the businesses. And the cloud part is infrastructure. That is the most important part, because the cloud has to make sure how they are securing our securing their physical data centers, right? The hardware and the network configurations and the infrastructure. The service availability is also one of the biggest challenge for the cloud providers, making sure that the services are operational and are available throughout the year, 365 into 24 into 7. The compliance and governance is also one of the factors that is lying in both of the CSPs and also on the customer's part, providing tools and the guidance for the customers to meet regulatory requirement. So you would have also seen that we have different tiers for each and every cloud provider, right? And they are also acting us or supporting us from a security perspective, making sure that we are following the right regulatory requirements depending upon where we want to deploy our instances throughout the world. And this is also one of the responsibilities that has to be clear whenever you are signing a contract with the cloud providers, making sure that we have these things as a part of the checklist and keeping this, as a part of the ongoing migrations that are being done. With that, now I would just like to go to the next question. I mean, this is also one of the questions which I would like to ask you guys. What strategies have you implemented to secure your cloud environment? And also, how do you measure their effectiveness? I think most of us in the call would have already, or they would have been a part of the cloud migration journey, which was there in their businesses or with the client. I just want to understand the strategy, what you guys had. And then in the next topic, we will be talking a bit on the cloud security strategy. And also, how we can measure the effectiveness of these strategies. So if anyone would like to answer this, can please raise their hands. I can see we have some hands already raised. So we'll try to take around 3 to 4 answers because we have also a packed agenda till the end, and I would also like to take some questions from you guys. So just to save some buffer for that. So we'll pick up 4 and maybe co-host can unmute.
Kamal, okay, we have Anchal. Probably Anchal, I'm going to enable you. Anchal, you can. Anchal, can you talk?
Hi, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Basically, the strategies to secure a cloud environment, one could be, since one of the key responsibility lies with the client is the data protections. Hence, the encryption could be one of the strategy to secure our data in the cloud environment. Second could be the secure coding to safeguard our applications and the data, secure APIs and secure connections. So, and ensuring that we are auditing and we are putting in right measures to ensure the guidelines provided by the cloud service providers to maintain the compliance as well as the access controls, privilege access management, all those strategies we can implement while to maintain secure cloud environment.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. All the points I think you have covered anyways, what all things we should keep in mind, and also, how we can strategize these things whenever we are starting the implementation part or securing the cloud environment. Thanks a lot. We'll now pick up the next answer. Okay, I can see we have Gaurav Mukhija.
Yeah, hi, Kamal.
Hi.
I think Gaurav, correct. Go ahead. Gaurav, go ahead. Probably Davis journey. Davis? Davis?
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I wanted to speak two things, which is I think we are missing out. We are probably not doing it to be exactly. So one is that we are not exercising the least privileges access controls, mostly in the cloud. That's what I see in many places. I think having a least access control in system will give us a lot of restrictions to the the bad
Yep.
actors. Number
Right.
second, what I see when things are in the cloud, people generally don't focus on backup and backup into a vault or in a secure way, or maybe an outside backup, and then restoring and testing those backups to fully test this environment. People generally lean on availability as a basic nature of or the characteristics of this cloud environment, and they don't go that path, and when an incident happens they regret this. So these two things I wanted to emphasize. Well, there are so many other aspects, but I just wanted to emphasize this one little more.
Yeah, I think that's pretty right. That the least privilege is something what we should also keep in mind when we are talking about defense in depth. And this is one of the, I think that is one of the key areas which is always missed out when we have the wrong permissions given to the wrong guys, and we end up, having some kind of disasters on the cloud. Yeah, that's pretty good. You share that. Thanks, Davis. So we'll take
Gaurav, probably I don't know, Gaurav was
yeah, now I think I can see Gaurav is here.
Yeah, are you able to hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, Gaurav.
Okay. Okay. So another option could be implementing a cloud security platform like Wiz, wherein all the vulnerabilities which are there, those can be communicated to the right application teams, and this can be monitored on with a particular frequency, let's say monthly or whatever, and that they are being mitigated or not. That could be another way to ensure effectiveness.
Yeah, I think that's. I think you're actually pointing out towards the posture management, and that is one of the main part. Why we should have CSPM in place. And whenever we have such issues coming up, those are delegated or shared across the teams in a timely manner. Yeah, I think that is also one of the key areas from a strategic perspective that we should keep in mind. Thanks for that, Gaurav. Okay, and then I think we have few more hands. We also have some more questions coming up, so I think we'll take the last answer now, and then we have some set of more questions coming up. Then we'll be picking up, more attendees in that question. But yeah, still you guys can also write your answers in the chat. I'll also be going through those, and definitely it will be great to have your feedback on these questions as well. So we'll take the answer from Praveen now.
Okay, Praveen, 1 minute. Okay, let me get Praveen.
Yeah, I just did unmuted.
Okay.
Him, so
okay,
perfect. Yes, Praveen, over to you. Praveen, are you there?
Probably some issue. Probably you go ahead and Kamal. Yeah, you will listen more. Thank you.
Okay, fine, sure. All right, so I think most of the parts have already been discussed or maybe mentioned by the attendees. Yeah, but I would just like to bring out some of the key points that I have from my point of view. The first thing is defense in depth, and that is one of the key areas to have security controls, on each and every layer. And definitely, it is also one of the one of the main reasons why we have IAM in place when we talk about the least privileges. Then the data encryption is there. How we are making sure that the data is encrypted. We might be secure from a cloud point of view, but the data that is coming from the front end to the APIs might not be secure, and we might end up having some kind of man in the middle attack. Or we might have some of the third-party integrations which we are normally using nowadays to track the analytics, right? We have Google Analytics service running up. We have some different analytics services that are coming up from SAP and all. If you're not making sure, sure that the sorry, if you're not making sure that the data is rightly configured in the requests, we might end up sending them data to the third-party providers as well, which will eventually end up in a data breach. In my assessment a couple of years back, I saw that some of the data that was being shared by the GET request. So that means we have a GET request, and in the endpoints, we are sharing some kind of PI data of the customers. Let's say my date of birth, my name, and my address and other things. Along with that, we have an analytics service that is running on the front end, which is tracking my each and every movement, right? All the clicks and other things. And because of that analytics part, my GET request was also sent as a part of the referral header to a third-party vendor. And this was an issue that was found on prod. And the impact was pretty huge because it was not only for me, but for all the customers who are using that particular portal, their PI data was being sent to the third-party vendor. And then the client had to work out with the Google Analytics team to wipe out everything that was shared, as a part of the referral header to the analytics servers, so that we are not having any API data stored in the Google that was outside their territory. So all these things are also considered or should be considered whenever we are looking at the data at rest and data transit. Then we have IAM. We should have role-based authentication systems, authentication controls. Multi-factor authentication is one of the right aspect which we are actually neglecting if I'm looking at a cloud security perspective. Because whenever I'm talking to a security architect or maybe to an application architect, they have a point of view like, okay, this is something what should be managed by the cloud, right? If you are using cloud, we only have to deploy the code. We only have to create some kind of pods, push the code, and we are good to go. Because they are pretty much convinced with the flexibility and the scalability of the cloud. At point of time, they are actually neglecting the security aspect. But we have a lot of things that are there from the cloud which can be used, like IAM. Then we have continuous monitoring in place, which makes sure that we are monitoring the potential threats, right? I have also seen that in some of the cloud providers, they are also giving us some kind of rabbit hole. That means if we see that we are getting a lot of requests from unknown IPs that might give us, or that might send us to a DOS attack, the cloud configurations automatically will send those IPs to a rabbit hole where we are just testing them and we are not doing anything. And the attackers will get a kind of impression that, yeah, the services are not down. Okay, so all these things are there, which also comes as a part of SIAM monitoring and also analyzing the data and how we are doing it. So this is the strategy that I actually try to keep and also would like to share with you. The first thing is defense in depth. Then we have data encryption at rest. And then we have IAM. I think this is something what we already discussed. The continuous monitoring and threat detection is something what we should always keep in mind, because we might have an attack that is coming to an IP. If I'm looking at it from a cloud perspective, an attacker will always try to, attack the bucket. It can be an AWS bucket, S3 bucket, right? So irrespective of which business that bucket belongs to, if I'm placing a kind of intruder attack, which is sending out requests again and again, right? That will actually have an impact on the overall performance of the business as well. So it's always good to monitor these things from a potential threat perspective and giving the right remediation for these things as well. And how we can do that? Let's say I got an attack today, but I'm not keeping an eye on the monitoring part. I'm just like, okay, maybe the customers are pretty much busy right now. We have a Flipkart Big Billion sale coming up. Because of that, we have a lot of load coming on the Flipkart side on the Amazon, and then we are not doing the right assessments. And I think the guys from GRC who are in this call will able to relate this, that the assessments and the audits should be done in a rightly manner, because that is from where we get the right juice, right? To pick up the next countermeasures, what we can have. We'll be able to evaluate a lot of IPs, although it's really easy to fake IPs as well. But yeah, at least the patterns and the recognitions is something what we can pick from these assessments and audits. And from my point of view, how I usually work, whenever I see that we have such kind of attacks coming up, I look at the patterns that are coming in and then try to create some kind of automated tools, which will be acting as a countermeasure if these things are coming up, or maybe if such patterns in the attacks are coming up from the next time. And adding those tools in the cloud configuration itself is also something what makes it more interesting for us, acting as a part of the blue team and handling these attacks. Yeah. The last point is on the vendor and the third-party risk management. This is also one of the key areas, right? We have to see what are the best practices of the vendors and the cloud service providers, because that also gives us an impression about how much seriously they are taking security from their point of view. And we also have to make sure that the compliance policies that are there with the third-party services are in compliance with the ones that are created by our organization. It can be from the client or it can be from some other businesses. That being said, we have some of the compliance management that are from HIPAA, from GDPR, from PCI DSS and all. And these all things are something what should be considered whenever we are looking at the cloud security strategy. With that, I'll move to the next part now. That is a live poll, which I'll be now running.
Somebody was, I think, is mentioning that the SOC 2 report, can we depend upon the SOC 2 report from the cloud service provider?
I did not understand your point. Which report?
SOC 2 type 2 report. Yeah, I think Soumik was saying, I think the implementation of the strong policy document, getting a SOC 2 and type 2 report and CSP issued. Yeah, that's what one of the suggestion. Definitely that is available.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so definitely, I mean, that is something, a valid point, that we should have a SOC 2 document report from the CSPs, because that is, I mean, this is how it will help us, right? When we are looking at it from an infra perspective. If I'm getting a kind of SOC report, then definitely I'll be able to see a lot of things that are unnecessary, a lot of noise that is coming on the cloud. It might be from a different vendor, or it might be from a different business who is my, not really attacker, but who is my competitor in the global market.
But the question is, the cloud service provider is willing to share. It is based on the volume of, if it is talking about the SMEs, probably they will not share the SOC 2 type 2 report. But they will be sharing the SOC 3 type 3, which is available in the web. Correct?
Yeah, so it depends. I mean, it also depends on the tier part as well. If the provider sees that we have a lot of attacks coming in, then as a part of the regulatory, they have to agree and they have to share these things as well. If I see that I have a downtime coming up on the cloud provider now because of some attack that occurred in the past, or maybe in last 1 week or last day as well. So now the CSP has to make sure that they are sharing us. Definitely, they'll not be sharing everything. But yeah, if they find something which might be really interesting for us to debug this issue, and also, it depends. I mean, if you're looking at it from a legal perspective, they should share everything to us. If I want to file a legal, if I want to fight a legal battle now because I had a data breach, right? Then definitely they have to share the report as well.
Irrespective of the
exactly
large or small or a big.
Right. Right. But it depends. I mean, if I see that I only had a downtime, then I can see these things on my own from some of the tools like Dynatrace as well, right? Which are there as a part of the monitoring. For that, I don't even need to have the cloud reports, because I already have some of the reports from the multiple tools where I'm tracking these things in a timely manner. I think Dynatrace is one of the biggest tools out there, which is giving us a lot of insights on the volume that is being occupied by the pods, and also giving us some kind of detailed perspective on the IPs that are being used in these attacks, or maybe giving us some kind of more insights on the DOS attack that are being done.
Yeah, the question is that from a multi-cloud. Now it is a single cloud. Yes, it is very easy. Probably it would be a cakewalk. But from a multi-cloud service provider, how are you going to manage? It's very complex, right?
Right. So that is something what I actually have in the challenges that will be coming up. How we can do that, and to be honest, we don't have a precise answer for that. I'll just give you a hint on that, because it depends, right? How we are doing it on the multi-cloud. I've seen a lot of businesses who are actually working on different clouds, and at times it's also a bit risky, because looking at different modules and looking at different aspects from the features perspective of different cloud providers, it's a bit dicey. But that is something what I have in my slides for today as well. I don't have a concrete answer on that, but yeah, I'll try to give some kind of insights on what can be done and how those things, can be handled.
Okay. Now you want to
Okay.
do the run the poll?
Yes, now we'll run this poll and just to understand what is the most which cloud security measure the audience believes is the most important for protecting the sensitive data. So we'll just run this poll and
you're able to run?
yes, I'll just relaunch it now. Okay. I'll just bring it on screen.
Yeah, we're able to see it.
Perfect. So I can see that we have most of the answers are basically focused on the encryption at rest and transit. Great. So just to summarize this up, I mean, if you look at the overall options that I have, right, and these all are the building blocks for the cloud security measures. So from a ranking perspective, definitely I can't give a weightage to one or the other. But yeah, if you look at it, if we don't have one of these things in place, we are at risk. It can be monitoring, or it can be IAM, or it can be encryption or MFA or vulnerability assessments. So definitely, all of them plays a major role. And yeah, from the answers perspective, I think the audience is also pretty clear on what are things and how these things should be handled. And but I just wanted to understand your opinion on this, and I think we are good on this part. So I'll just end the poll now, and I'll be sharing the answers. Okay, perfect. Great. So this is what we have from the polling perspective. I'll move to the next part now, which is the interesting one when it comes to IAM. So identity and access management. It's also one of the point that we had in the previous live polling question. And I will be talking a bit on this, how we can implement strong policies, to manage identities and control access to the cloud resources. Most of us would agree on this, that we have role-based access control as well. And that is also one of the key areas to look at, but we should not forget to have the principle of least privileges. I think this is something what was also highlighted before by the audiences in one of the questions. And then we have multi-factor authentication, which actually adds an extra layer. If in case your credentials are being disclosed or leaked, the MFA is there to safeguard you. And that is one of the best part of what I like about MFA. But it's also not just to have an MFA in place, but making sure that it's implemented or integrated in the right way. In one of the audits, in one of the red teaming exercise, what I saw for one of the businesses, right, they had long, strong passwords in place. They also had a MFA screen in place as well, right? But the implementation was not really good. So when I say it was not really good, that means they had, from the front end perspective, they had MFA screen there. But if you just ignore that particular, front end screen, you can do it anyways. Either you can do it by Burp Suite, you can send the next request, or you can simply, if from a newbie perspective, you can just go to the inspect element, you can remove that particular layout from the MFA part, and then if you do any actions, those actions were actually being done. So the idea was not to have MFA just for the sake of having it, right? But making sure that anything that is coming up after MFA should not be allowed until you are the right owner to perform that task. And it applies for all these things for IAM as well, for RBAC, and also for MFA. From my experience in IAM, I found a couple of issues, I think a couple of years back in Google, where even if you are changing the IAM rules, right, those things were not being reflected properly. And that was something that should actually be handled by the CSP itself. But somehow there was a loophole why it was not working properly, and I was able to exploit that in a right way. And then the Google VRP team was pretty good enough to fix it up and also acknowledge the issue. So these all things are there, which should be taken up from best practices perspective. The next part we have is what all things are there. We have already discussed these things in the beginning, but if you look at now at the policy-based access controls, right? The best part here is we should define the policies, who can access what. And all these policies should be applied to the set of users who are performing these actions. Because assigning roles to the users based on the job function is one of the best part, rather than adding users and assigning them one by one all these privileges. So that means we will have all the users in the beginning with the least privileges, and then depending upon the policies, we'll be adding the users to the policy, and automatically the policies will be assigned the access controls. And this is how IAM should be created and also applied. The next part now we have is on the regular security audits and assessment. So the importance is why we should have audits and assessment, to make sure that we are maintaining a secure cloud environment. Because audits will not only help us in identifying the vulnerabilities, but they will also help us in providing the remediations for that. Maybe we'll be getting some time to create some countermeasures for those things from an audits perspective as well. And we have multiple types of audits. We have security audits, which takes care of the organization's infrastructure security, looking at it from a policy perspective. And the purpose of the audit should be pretty clear. It should not be a kind of audit that is done just for the sake of doing it, right? If I'm doing an audit, I should know what my purpose is. If I'm trying to verify the audit from a compliance perspective, from a regulatory perspective like GDPR, or if I'm looking at it from a security configuration perspective, right? Maybe from the firewall on the access controls or at the encryption settings perspective. And we also should keep a close eye on the inspecting the cloud service providers, security protocols as well. How those things are assessed and what are the audits they have done so far. And if we can get a kind of green signal from them, that will also be really helpful. The next part would be auditing the vulnerability assessment, right? Which gives us a kind of clear vision on the security issues that might come up from our code on the application level. And the focus areas also, how we are trying to mitigate these issues when you are looking at it on the cloud environment, right? It might be any unpatched software, or it can be any misconfigurations or any exposed API, which ideally should be private, but they are publicly exposed. And then the end part is how we are remediating these things, right? Remediation is the best part. If you're not remediating these things and adding all these reports and outcomes to the backlog, then we are actually coming back to the same loop, right? So the right idea would be to invest some time to remediate these things, maybe create a separate release for the security stuff, just to make sure that it's not breaking something. And if it's breaking something, we have to see how we can countermeasure. Assessing the risk is also one of the important areas to look at, because moving security along with the business is one of the key aspects, right? We don't want to bring the business down. If something is not running on the web, then definitely we are anyways on an outrage. So the idea here should be looking at it from a risk perspective, assessing the risk, looking at it, how much money we have in stock, how much money we have at stake and also how much impact we might have if these things are not, being taken up in a rightly manner. So these are the few things that we have from an audit perspective: the penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, security audit, and the last one is configuration of these audits. With that, I'll move to the next part, that is from a compliance and regulation part. And I think most of the audience we have in this call is from GRC only. So
you have one question, Kamal. That is, I am from third party risk management. Would you like to know the SOC 2 Type 2 report provided by CSP provide complete security assurance?
The question that we are from Raghava, right?
Yeah, no, Shashidhar.
Just a moment. So when you say provide complete security assurance, can you please brief a bit on this?
Probably, the question would be, yes, can we depend upon this SOC 2 Type 2 report? No? Yeah. Can we 100% depend? Yes. Answer is yes or no. Yeah.
Definitely yes. I mean, if you're looking at it from a security operations center, right? So definitely this is something what we can consider. And we should, if it's about transparency, then definitely yes. If you're getting some reports from the vendor, then we should agree to that, and it will give us an assurance. Because if you look at all these things, right, whenever we are starting the migration part, and the SOW and the contracts are pretty huge, right? But all these things are actually covered in the contractual phase itself, that what all things the business has the right to ask to the vendor, and also the vendor has to be transparent in sharing these things.
It again depends upon what kind of commitment you have, correct? So from a security point of view, availability point of view, continuity point of view, what is your commitment? From that commitment point of view, you need to say for example, ISO 27K, when somebody is certified in ISO 27K, is that 100% secured? Probably answer is no, correct?
Yeah, that's true. So it depends on the commitment, you rightly said that, and also on the contractual terms that we have signed with the vendor. And I can see that we have one more question. Getting a security audit assessment from CSP is a challenge. Is vendors don't want to share that information apart from some standard reports. See, so Raghav, that's what I said. I mean, it depends on the criticality of the situation, right? If I say that I have an outage right now, and I want to get these things resolved because I don't want to go into the same hole again and again, right? In that way, if these things are justified in the contractual terms, then definitely vendor should actually share these reports. But standard report would be I don't think so. Standard report will make much use. I agree with you, but at least from my point of view, till now I have never faced a lot of challenge when I'm looking at this getting these reports from the vendors. But maybe the other reason would be we also have some in-house tools, right, which are actually tracking these things. So when I say in-house tools, those tools are actually tracking the activity that is happening on the cloud, monitoring the clouds, looking at the endpoints, looking at the APIs, how much load we are getting on what kind of API. And if I have a strong case, then I can go to the vendor and I can tell the vendor that this is something what I'm getting a lot nowadays. I cannot see any transactions that are being done on this API, but I can see a lot of attacks or maybe a lot of IPs which are hitting this API from a different perspective. And then from that point of view, I can ask the vendor, but it depends whether vendor will be able to share those things or not. Because if vendor sees that I already have those things in place, then that thing lies in my SOW, right? So it depends on how the contracts are being created and framed. It's totally up to the contract that have been signed up. I hope I answered your question. Okay, then I think, do we have one more question here? No. So now we'll move to the compliance part. So I have not added all the compliance regulatories, but here are some of them. The GDPR, we have PCI DSS, we have HIPAA, then we have FedRAMP, and then we have ISO 27K. So if you look at these compliance, right, each and every compliance have a different role. So like for GDPR, we have a purpose to protect the PI data and the privacy of EU citizens, right? And not only they are strict on the how we are handling the data, but also they have a clear requirement like if you are storing the data should be encrypted. We should provide the clear consent of how we are storing the data. And any data breach that has occurred should be notified to the customers within 72 hours. And that is one of the best part of being transparent with the customers, right? And then a customer can also request to the businesses to remove their data as a part of their data right to be forgotten. We call it in terms of data subject rights. And then we have another one that is HIPAA from US, which states how we are storing the sensitive health information for the customers. Again, they also follow the similar approach like encrypting the data, providing the right access controls and authentication when someone wants to access that data, and then assessment and audits of the data that is being stored. And they also have some kind of data notification protocols. And likely we have PCI, which is taking care of the payment standard, and which is, I think, one of the biggest challenges what I see in the industry right now, how we are transferring and processing the credit card information. I think now in India also we have a rule from RBI how you can store the data, encrypted. I think you would have seen it in multiple vendors or selling platforms now that they can store your data without even asking you for CVV again, because your data, your payment data is now encrypted, and that is also something good. And then we have FedRAMP, and then we have ISO. So FedRAMP, I'll just say a few words about FedRAMP. It's about how we are assessing and authorizing and monitoring the cloud services which are used by the federal agencies. And that is the most important part if you're looking at it from a US government. So that means FedRAMP can access the data, they can control the data from their point of view, they can do some kind of risk assessment as well. But it's only for the data for the cloud services that are being used by the Federal Reserve Services, right? And this is the law that allows them to authorize and monitor a lot of cloud services which are not allowed to other businesses which are owned by the public. And then at the end we have ISO. ISO gives us a kind of framework which is maintaining and providing some kind of security management systems. It actually looks at it from a risk management perspective and also providing some kind of best practices for the cloud environment. So these are the few things that we have from the compliance part. And how we can achieve these compliance, I think this was some kind of question that I also received before. So the first thing is, first we need to look at where we want to reside our data, right? If I'm looking at it from a US client perspective or from a EU client perspective. And depending upon the cloud provider, we can check. And now I think all the cloud providers, they are providing us some kind of regulatory help in terms of all these policies, right? Like in AWS, Azure, and Google, they offer some kind of compliance tools to help us align the users with the regulatory requirements. Like in AWS, I think we have Compliance Center. Azure, we have Azure Policy, and then in Google, we have Google Cloud Compliance Report, which is actually giving us a lot of compliance stuff, which is helping the businesses. The monitoring part is pretty clear for all. Auditing these things and monitoring the tools and compliance helps us in ongoing the regulations. The data encryption is one of the things that we already spoke about, how we are encrypting the data and also storing it. And the last part is documenting and reporting. Maintaining that the documentation of practices and assessment is rightly done. And any breach that is being conducted is reported in a right and timely manner. That is one of the most important part. I've seen a lot of businesses who actually face a hefty fine from not reporting or not adhering to the GDPR in place. And I think most of the guys from the compliance will be agreeing to me on this. And now if I say that we have a business who wants to not follow these things, right?
So Kamal, one question on the FedRAMP. This FedRAMP is only applicable for US, correct?
Right.
So the FedRAMP is is supposed to be the most secured environment. Is that correct, Kamal?
Correct.
And
Yes.
it's very expensive as well.
Yeah, so it's only for the US government. It's not allowed for any other businesses.
Okay.
So if you are from Fed, then you are only allowed to have this. So they actually created a separate, kind of stuff of Fed. I think that is also something good from my point of view, but we don't know what all things are happening inside it. So that is also something a kind of black box for most of us, because this is completely customized as per their requirement, and a lot of things are there which are not really publicly available and accessible. Yeah.
So you mean to say that you can't have that FedRAMP template to other environment? Yeah.
No. So only someone who is from the federal agency is allowed to have this particular. So it's basically a kind of management program which is only applicable for the US government, and the purpose is only to provide assist and authorize monitoring services for use by federal agencies. So that means if I'm a part of this program, I can access some of the services which are owned by other vendors as well, because of some legal things that I have in my hand. You can take it from that way. So not only I'm having some separate sandbox for myself for the government, but also I'm allowed to do some kind of other assessments on different businesses. Okay, so the consequence of not having these things in place, if you look at the
one
fines,
more question is there from FedRAMP point of view. Does India government have anything planned towards equivalent to FedRAMP?
Definitely they should have, but as of now, I don't see anything that came up from our government. But most likely, I think last couple of months back they introduced a new bill. I don't remember the name, but it's not pretty much similar to what we have from FedRAMP. But yeah, most likely we'll see something coming up in a couple of years.
Yeah. Sandeep was saying DPDPA, but not DPDPA. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, that was a question from Ajay Pinto. Yeah, that was a nice question actually. So the consequences are pretty huge if we look at it, right, from a GDPR perspective. So the fines are around up to 20 million euros or 4% of the global revenue stake. And I've actually seen these things happening, and this is pretty bad if I'm looking at it from a reputation perspective, because after that the bank also, or the business also, has to provide a kind of publicly disclosure message that this was something happened with them and they were not able to adhere to these particular policies and they had to pay so much amount as a part of the fine. And definitely it also impacts a lot on the businesses, on the reputation, loss of customer trust, making sure that the market might disturb because of these things. A lot of things might happen on the stock part as well. And operational disruption is also one of the points. If these investigations are being done from the agencies like GDPR, then that will also have an impact on the audits. On the that might also cause a lot of impact on the business operations as well. Because if someone wants to see how I'm storing the data, because I did some kind of misuse activities in the past, then I need to give some effort and provide some information to them as well how I'm doing it, and definitely it will add a kind of operational load as well. So these are the topmost consequences of not being compliance with these policies. And I think regulatory plays one of the major roles, because if you are not compliant with these terms or with these policies, then it's definitely not a good idea, because we cannot be transparent to the customers how we are storing this data, right? So this is one of the most important aspect of security, not only for the cloud, but also for the overall cybersecurity. With this, I'll move to the next part. It's a kind of question now to all of us in the call. So what kind of visibility and the controls do you currently have over your cloud infrastructure? And how we actually mitigate, these kind of risks that are coming up from misconfigurations that are being done at the cloud level. So we'll take this question. I'll take a pause, and then I would just like to hear your thoughts on this, and then we'll move to the next topic, that is configuration management. So you guys can raise the hands and then we will unmute you.
We have people.
Enable Ajay. Ajay, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Raj. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this kind of visibility, I think that one is we are dependent on the CSP to let us know if there is any incidents, and second is we have continuous monitoring by the security ops. So the security logs, whatever the Telnet trace send, and then yeah, I think these two types of monitoring is what we're doing at present.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for your inputs. We'll take the next answer now. I think that was pretty clear that the way you answered it, right? What all things are owned by us and what all things are owned by CSP and how we are making that the bridge between us and the CSP is transparent. So that is pretty clear. Thanks for your inputs. The next one we have from Praveen. I'll just unmute Praveen. I hope this time you will be able to speak. If you might not have any issues in the network or maybe on your end. So Praveen, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect. Great.
Good, Praveen.
Oh, Praveen, I think you're on mute. Meanwhile, before Praveen comes, we have Davis.
Davis.
So Davis, do you want to go ahead?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, Davis, you are audible.
Okay.
So with the latest technologies like CNAP and all, so we have a very good visibility about the cloud environment and the applications we spin up, and every stages we basically put the checks and control gates, and then top of it we monitor this environment pretty strictly with the help of EDR and so on.
Yep. Yeah, I think that was something what you added newly, but yeah, that is something what we should have in place. Rightly said. Thanks a lot for your inputs, David.
I think Praveen, you are back, right? We saw that you were unmuted. You want to go ahead and ask the question?
I think Abjal is here. I can see Abjal unmuted. Is unmuted now.
Yeah, sir, go ahead.
I think we'll take one question and move forward. Afzal, if you are.
Yep, sure. Okay, then maybe
Yeah.
I can check. We can check with Nagisa then. Nagisa,
Yeah, Nagesha.
I can see his hand from last couple of questions. So Nagisa, over to you.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Basically, if any security events, not incidents, any security events, we need to configure to any security, I mean, common channels, which we can able to see, basically like Slack channels. What we use in our current organizations, each production environment, production infrastructure, we configured with the Slack channel, with added all the stakeholders, any security events, even though if it is false positive or true positive, that events will come to us as an alert. So I think this kind of monitoring is very much required on the overview of all the security events to manage a better security incident management and availability of the logs. So based on our business need, we need to make available the log as per the regulatory and legal requirements. I think these are the effective controls we need to have on the cloud infrastructure.
Correct. Yeah, so I think you summarized it pretty well, because it's not only about monitoring, but it's also about whether that data is actually, reaching the right guys.
Yep.
And when I say right guys, those are the architects who are actually configuring the clouds, or the guys who are actually doing the coding part. So you also mentioned something about the vulnerability, right? Whether it's a false positive or if it's actually an issue. All these things should actually be delivered to the right stakeholders so that we are having the right remediations in place. Yeah, that's correct. So now I'll move to the next part, that is the configuration management. So it's actually about how we are maintaining these settings, right? Like you just mentioned, how we are defining the policies across the cloud infrastructure, across the applications and the services, and how we are ensuring that the systems are securely up and running. That also means we are reducing the vulnerabilities that are coming up from these misconfigurations that might be caused by some wrong configurations that have been defined. Okay. So if you look at this particular flow, right, it will give us some kind of insights about the importance of configuration management in cloud security and the tools that are there. I'll not be digging into each and every tool, but I'll give you some insights on what all tools we have in place, what are the best practices for the cloud configuration management, and also the benefits that we have from the effective configuration management. So the importance is pretty clear. It helps us in setting us or to avoid the common mistakes that are coming up. One of the example would be leaving, a storage bucket publicly open, right? And this is something that has caused a lot of data breach to multiple businesses, because the businesses think that now we are on the cloud, but they don't know the right do's and don'ts of the cloud, right? And this is one of the very basic stuff that I see, and I still find a lot of issues that are coming up from these cloud mismanagements that are being done on the publicly storage buckets that are publicly exposed. The next part would be configuration management, how we are making sure that the systems are securely up and running, and how we are reducing the vulnerabilities that are coming up from the misconfigurations. And then we have some best practices, and then we have the benefits. So I'll be talking a bit about the configuration tools that we have on the cloud. So as of now, I've noted on the 4 topmost, which I always see a lot in multiple businesses. We have AWS CloudFormation, which is that is basically used for automating the provisioning and configuration of the cloud infrastructure. It also provides us a lot of templates which can be used, and the benefits are it's actually an IAC, that is infrastructure as a code, and is used to ensure that consistency is always maintained throughout the cloud engagements or the ongoing transformations. Also, it helps us a lot in managing the resources in a automated way, and it's really easy to deploy. And also we have a lot of secure configurations that are predefined from AWS on this, so that is one of the major advantages that we have for the CloudFormation. The next part that you see here, we have Terraform. Like it's written that it's an open source tool that works across multiple platforms for automating the provisioning and management of the infrastructure part. But the benefits that we have from Terraform is it's a multi-cloud compatible. configuration, right? And you can use it across multiple platforms. And you can also easily roll back to the previous versions in case of any issues you see, right? It allows infrastructure to be versioned and easily roll back to the previous version states. It is also one of the IAC tool, which is used for maintaining the configuration part. And then we have Ansible. It is also another configuration management tool, but the benefits are, at least from my point of view, the benefit I see, it uses a playbook in YAML format to define the infrastructure and the configuration, and that is pretty easy to write and read. You can scale it on both on-prem and on cloud. That is also one of the best benefit what I liked about Ansible, and it's very lightweight, right? So you can use it for automating your tasks or for configuring a lot of things. That's how you can deploy Ansible. And then we have Puppet and Chef, that is the fourth one. These both tools, they help us in automating the deployment of the infrastructure. And the benefit is one of them is agent-based, and the other one is more flexible in terms of defining some steps for configuring the cloud resources. So each one of these tools plays a different role, and depending upon the requirement, you can give more weightage to any one of them, depending upon what you want, how you want it to be done. And most of these things are actually pretty easy to do. If you are doing some hands-on, I think in 1 or 2 weeks, you'll be easily able to understand how these things work, because we already have a lot of predefined templates which are there, which can be used, for these purposes. Now coming to the best practices part. The best practices for configuration management would be using IAC, that is infrastructure as code, automating the configuration enforcement. The reason why I brought this point here, because if you are doing these things manually, it will eventually, you will end up creating some kind of errors. So automation will give you more kind of flexibility in terms of doing these things or redoing these things again and again, and preventing any kind of issues that might come up from manual human intervention, right? And that is one of the key aspect to look at. The next part is auditing and monitor configuration part. This is also something what is required as a part of the configuration management best practices. Then we have RBAC here as well. Limit who is allowed to change these configurations, right? Again, we are looking at it from a least privilege perspective. We should not allow anyone or everyone to change the right configurations for these cloud security settings, right? And the last one is version control. Just to keep an eye or to track the changes that have been done so far. If you want to roll back to a previous version, you should know what was changed in the latest release, whether those changes were approved by some of the business stakeholders or someone from the architect team as well or not. And that will actually eventually, make your configuration management more strong, because the benefits are pretty clear. We want to make sure that we are having or enforcing security best practices by having these configurations in the cloud. And if we are leaking any of these practices, then definitely we might end up with 1 or 2 issues that might come up on the overall cloud posture of our application.
So Kamal, one question is there, is that infrastructure as a code, should we use the service provider service, for example, Azure as an infrastructure as a code, or we should use some tool like Terraform, something like that, and we create infrastructure as a code? That's the question.
Can we make use of pre-certified code, more like templates that have been certified? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it depends, right? What I've seen, I have also seen, at least what I've seen, most of the businesses that I've worked with, they use it from a multiple tooling perspective, right? So they don't want to use the same IAC from the same vendor for which they are actually, using the cloud. But it also depends on the tie-ups. If the business is having some kind of flexi tie-up with the vendors, so the vendor will also be giving you more weightage in terms of these toolings, right? If you are using a low tier package for any of the cloud providers, then definitely it's up to you if you want to use any other IAC. But from my point of view, it will hardly make any difference, because if you are using a tool like Terraform or a tool like CloudFormation, right? So that means we are not giving the overall authority to Azure or maybe to Google, right? I have these things in my control now. If I have everything given to the vendor now, then I have to think before I am going on any disagreements, right? Although we might have some things that may be covered up from a contract perspective, but yeah, not keeping all. I mean, it's like a simple term, right? Putting all
So
the
you're
eggs in
saying
the same
bring
basket.
your
Yeah,
own code. Bring your own code.
correct. Yes, we should have definitely we should have that thing, because if you are putting everything in the same basket, then we might end up if there is some kind of breach that is happening at the root level of any CSP. So we should have control on these things for sure.
But the other question is on that on this misconfiguration. Somebody was saying that the largest the misconfiguration is the S3 bucket. What would be the reason of the S3 bucket? Is it just no knowledge, or is it no training issue, or is it a cultural issue?
Correct. So what I've seen so far, I mean, if you look at any of the businesses, right, how they work, when you get any access to any cloud, right, in the beginning, some of the DevOps engineers or SREs, they will be creating some kind of test buckets, right? That's how they do. They create some test buckets just to see whether these things are working fine or not. And at the end, they might end up with having some buckets as well, which are publicly accessible. Okay. So the idea here is, if you're doing something for training purposes, please make sure that those things are not accessible publicly. So definitely education comes into picture here. Rightly training them, giving them some kind of sessions, maybe once in a quarter or maybe once in 6 months, providing the best practices to the SMEs, and auditing all the buckets that have been created by the businesses, right? So all these things are definitely there. But yeah, the education or educating part, the training part is one of the biggest factor, because we might have some of the colleagues who are working right now as a DevOps engineer, and after a couple of months they have left the organization, right? And they created some buckets which were there for testing purpose, and it was created publicly because client wanted to have it, maybe, for instance. And now they forgot to keep a track of it, and now it's lying there from last couple of months, couple of years. And if you just go to Google, right, you just type site colon S3, I mean, just the name of the bucket. You don't even have to give the name, right? You have to give the format. If you just give the format of the bucket, you'll be able to see a lot of publicly accessible buckets lying there, right? That might be from any region. You might be able to see any resume of any of the IT professional. You might be able to see even the health reports as well there. Because once you upload anything on the cloud, right? For me, I'm giving my data to any business. Maybe it might be a bank, it might be any shopping portal and all. But how they are storing that data, that is their responsibility.
Yeah, you can have a policy yourself, correct, Kamal? You can have a policy that,
Yes. So definitely having a policy is definitely required, but also making sure that if there are pre-existing buckets that were created, right? And I think all these things are actually a part of pen test as well. The pen test, actually, when I'm doing the pen test, I'm also looking at all these things from a Google Doc perspective. So I'm not only auditing the application from the internal endpoint, but I'm also looking at what all things are publicly exposed, right? And if there's something that is not at the right place, we have to remove the configurations, or we have to modify the configuration if required, and also remove the rights for those publicly accessible buckets which are there. All right, so then I think we are good with the questions. We'll move to the next slide. I still have to cover around 10 to 12 slides now, and we have only 15 minutes, so I'll just try to move it a bit fast. So the next part is future trends in the cloud security. So here I'll be showing you what all trends we have, looking at it from a future, things that are evolving right now. The first thing is zero trust architecture. This is something what we discussed already. Never trust anything. Always verify. Even if it's coming from a legitimate user, we have to verify whether he is authenticated and authorized to perform these actions or not. And now we have a lot of things coming up from AI, right? AI and machine learning for threat detection. I think this is one of the best part. How we can groom AI to take care of these cloud security solutions for us, right? How we can make sure that we are using AI for threat detection. We are using it for the monitoring part as well. And then we have SaaS, that is secure access service as. It is more in terms of how we are making sure that network security is intact. looking at it from a VPN firewall and other gateways perspective, because that's how the data will be flowing from the public web to the database or maybe to the on-prem part. Yeah. And then the next part would be the concept of cloud cryptography. And this is something what is really important right now, because it can actually potentially break the traditional encryption methods. So now this is also something what is most of the vendors and the organizations are now looking at, how they can use or how they can explore quantum resistant cryptography, right? The idea here is to enhance the encryption techniques that are already in place, and also doing some kind of R&D in terms of having some kind of algorithms which are resistant to quantum attacks. And then we have something from privacy and computation part, which is more in terms of making sure that the regulations are in place. But how we can do that, right? This is the most important factor here. With the new technologies, how we are protecting the data, how we are making sure that the data analysis is done without exposing the raw data. We have one of the vendors in Switzerland. I don't remember the name right now, but they are actually analyzing the real data of the customers without using the PI data. And it's one of the best thing what I saw there. And they are using that data without PI data for some educational purposes, right? In the universities, in some masters, or if someone is doing some kind of computer PhD in computer science and all. So those students are allowed to have access to that data using that particular vendor forum. And it's pretty clean. It allows to give some kind of analysis and analytics on how these things are running up. And the last point is multi-cloud security. And this was something I think also a point from your end, right? How we can adapt to these multi-cloud strategies, right? Because it's really important. Now we have multiple vendors who are looking at it from different security perspective, or maybe from a governance perspective and all. So the idea here is to have a central security management, right? Which is handling multiple cloud providers. And that's how, or that's where we have CSPM in place. That is Cloud Security Posture Management, right? In CSPM, you have multiple ways how you can integrate multiple vendors. You can have visibility of multiple applications throughout distributed, and you can get a kind of clean dashboard of giving you more insights on what is going on at which application, and also where we are in terms of our overall security posture. And this is how we can actually take care of multi-cloud security solutions. And likely we have some of the stuff from data sovereignty as well, and then we have something from cloud native application. So cloud native is nothing but with growing cloud, right? Each vendor will be having some new features coming up, and they will also be removing some of the previous features. So how we are also migrating our applications or the features that we are using, right? If I'm using a feature right now and I got a notification from Google that after 6 months they'll be removing this feature and they'll be having a new feature coming up, right? In that way, how we are also integrating new features that are coming up from the vendors. So that is also something really important to see how we are scaling along with the cloud vendors. So the next part, I have a question, but I take this question at the end because I still have some slides to cover up, and then I think I'll be taking it up at the end. The next part is on the cloud monitoring and threat detection part. So if you look at it, the importance of this part is pretty clean. It enables us for any early detection of security issues and threats. That's the reason why we should have monitoring in place. The key components are following the best practices. So in security, I think one of the key aspects will always be to follow the best practices. It's not only about creating some kind of checklist, but also making sure that these things are being followed by the right guys. And then we should have threat detection techniques. And the last one is creating the best practices for the monitoring, right? Because now I say I have a lot of data, but what should I do with that data? That is the most important part. And how we can do that, it's here on the next part. So if you look at the key components of continuous monitoring, we have CSPM, we have SIEM, we have Cloud Access Security Broker, and then we have the benefits that we'll be getting from these things. So CSPM is a management tool, which will be monitoring the cloud environments for all the security misconfigurations and the compliance violations, right? And this is where I think this is one of the best tools for all the CISOs out there and also for the security architects who are working. It saves a lot of time and efforts, and it gives us a lot of clear visibility on the continuous scanning of the cloud settings or the network permissions and all. And gives us also a kind of alert, right? If something is not really compliant, I don't have to go into each and every application. If I have around hundreds of applications, right, I don't have to dig into each and every application. I'll be getting some kind of automated alerts based on the non-compliant configurations and the policy violations. And then we have SIEM. So SIEM is Security Information and Event Management tool, which will collect the data, analyze it, and then depending upon correlation that is happening between different logs, network traffic and all, it will detect and respond to security incidents, right? So this is one of the best tools that is out there for, I mean, I'm not naming the vendor, but this is one of the best tools that is there for the event management. And there is a lot of things that can be done from this, from real-time analysis to relating the events across multiple systems, identifying the patterns and behaviors, and then just to see what all incidents are coming up and also how we are responding to those incidents. Cloud Access Security Broker is a gatekeeper that is actually there between the users and the cloud services. You can also, it's not really a kind of firewall, but it's basically setting up some security policies for the users when they are monitoring the cloud accesses, right? And it's providing us some kind of visibility for the cloud applications users to see what all applications are being used from the users, and also enforcing some of the data security policies. And if there are some unauthorized accesses that are coming up, maybe someone logged in and now he's not having the right MFA code, right? Maybe then it will give us a trigger in terms of any unauthorized cloud usage as well. And also monitoring the user behavior. If they find that there might be some kind of potential abnormalities or any threats that might be coming up. So the benefits are pretty clear. If you look at the benefits, what we are getting from it, it provides visibility into the cloud application users and enforces their security policies. And also monitoring the user behavior to detect any abnormalities or any issues that might be coming up from the potential threats. So these are the key components that we have from cloud monitoring part. And now how we are doing it, right? I say, if I see that I have some data from SIEM now, but how I'm doing the detection part. So for that, like I said, one can also create some kind of custom scripts for themselves, depending upon the data and the businesses that they are working with. Or they can also use some kind of already data that is publicly accessible. They can use that to detect some kind of a detection part in anomaly, giving us some kind of access or creating some kind of AI and ML tools to identify the wrong behavior that are coming up. The same applies for IDRS as well. That is monitoring the network traffic and also looking at it from a suspicious perspective, right? So all these things are used in the threat detection techniques and gives us more benefits how we can countermeasure our defense systems, right? Because one can only grow once he's getting some attacks, right? Then only you'll be able to improve yourself. And then we have EDR, just to analyze the endpoint activities in the cloud environment. And this is also something which one has to keep in mind, because it will also give us some kind of real visibility on the endpoint security that are there from a threat detection perspective. So the best practices are, we should have a baseline for the normal activities. That's pretty clean. Looking at it from a network activity, we should know what is the right network activity and what is not, the good way. Automating the threat detection response. This is something what I said, how we can use AI and ML tools to automate these things. And then integrating cloud monitoring and onto the on-prem system, right? So having a hybrid is always a good stuff, because then you can keep an eye on both of these things at the same time, so that you will be able to see something which is not happening good on the cloud, but on the on-prem it's running smoothly, right? I mean, it's not the right approach, but yeah, this is something what can be considered as a part of the best practice. The last one is regularly reviewing the logs and alerts. And definitely, I mean, if you are not doing the last practice, then the top three are anyways of not use, because looking at the logs and the alerts, you'll be grooming yourself as a part of, the next line of defense. You'll be enhancing your security posture. You'll be increasing your security architecture in terms of the cloud security. The benefits are pretty clear here. You'll be able to have early detection of all these issues and threats. Incident time will improve if you are following these best practices. You'll be able to see a lot of improvement in incident response time. The compliance is anyways there always, because if you are following these best practices, you will always be compliant from a monitoring perspective and also from a breach perspective, right? And at the end, it's always helping you in increasing your security posture for the entire cloud infrastructure. We have another question on the live poll, but I'll take it at the end if I'll have some time. The last point I have is on the case study, which is something really interesting I thought to key for the end. So I'll be investing some time on this now. So now I'll be showing you some kind of real world scenarios of cloud security and incidents that actually occurred in the past, and also the lessons that we should learn from it, right? By growing or maybe by following the best practices for the securing the cloud environments. So if you look at the current screen that we have on the board, I've added 4 top businesses that are there. In 2019, Capital One of the US largest bank, right? It had a data breach. And it was because of a misconfigured AWS S3 bucket. And because of this, around 100 million customers' data was publicly exposed. So this is how, I mean, if you look at it, right, it's a very minor issue. Putting a bucket public or changing it to private, it will take hardly, milliseconds or something. But the problem here is how we are doing it, right? How the policies are being defined. Who is allowed to change these things, or who is allowed to create the buckets? So we should have a clear policy for that. And not only having a policies, but also testing again and again all these publicly or privately created buckets to make sure that we are safe on the cloud. So I have seen that some of the businesses, how they work, they'll do an assessment in the beginning of the cycle, right? When you are migrating to the cloud. And then they are only looking at it from an application perspective. But we should also at least keep an eye on the misconfigurations that are being done. If someone is altering the settings, right? We should keep an eye on those things as well. So all these things should also be covered as a part of pen test for sure. Although it will add a load on the monetary part as well for the businesses. But yeah, when it comes to security, I think we should not look at it from a monetary perspective, because 100 million customers' data is not a small stuff. The next part here is on the Zoom cloud security challenges. I mean, Zoom faced an attack in 2020, and because of this, it had an impact not only on the on its growth, but also I think a lot of vulnerabilities were found in its encryption techniques as well. So the lessons learned from this was the first intention or the first remediation done from the Zoom part was educating the colleagues, educating the team members. The trainings were provided again and again to them, and then Zoom implemented an end-to-end encryption, which is still running now, and it's a policy that is defined to safeguard the communication that is happening on the cloud platform. This is something what was created by Zoom for their own company. We also had an attack on GitLab, where an attacker inserted a malware into GitHub's cloud infrastructure, and that not only impacted the GitHub, but also all the vendors, all the businesses, those are actually using GitHub cloud, for their CI/CD stuff and all. So the impact of this was also pretty huge, and it was due to a third-party dependency which was there. But somehow they were able to, the attacker was able to inject a malware in that. And the last one, I think it's not really a a hack, but yeah, an importance of cloud security that I also had read it for Netflix. So Netflix is one of the pioneer. If you look at it from a cloud adoption, right? They built a cloud security strategy on AWS, not only on security as a code, but also from as continuous monitoring part. Most of the things that are running in Netflix are fully automated now. They are looking at it from a security configuration to incident response. Everything is scalable on the cloud and also automated. And the investment, if I'm looking at the investment for Netflix, they are investing more and more in the automation tools, right? And that's how they are bringing more things to the plate. And one of the tool, I think it's called Security Monkey, that is being created or created by Netflix itself, and it's used for monitoring and auditing all the AWS configurations, right? So that means they now even have an automated tool that is called Security Monkey, which is monitoring the configurations that are being done on the AWS part. And that is something what I also mentioned in the before some slides, right? We should not keep everything on the vendor side. We should have something on our end as well, so that we are keeping on an eye on how the vendor is doing or how the vendor is playing around with the configuration part or not. Or also if we have some things coming up from insider attacks, we're also keeping an eye on that. So these are the few stuffs that I have from the case studies perspective. The next part, I'll just try to summarize everything that we have discussed so far in 5 key points. The first part here is the best practices. If I'm talking about it, it should be from the regularly updating and doing the patch management part. It applies for both, right? It not only applies for the dependency that are being used on the code, but also from the cloud provider's perspective, what all things are given to us from the cloud. We should also keep an eye on all those patches as well. The next point is very important and critical, employee training on security awareness. And this is, I think, most of us should keep in mind. It's not only about how we are setting up the platform, right? But it's more about how we are educating or maybe providing them some awareness to the guys who are helping us in building those platforms. If you have the right set of people with the right attitude, with the right mindset in terms of security, and then definitely you will be out, on the clouds and happily, enjoying that journey. But if those things are not really there, then you might end up with, although you might end up with delivering some things on the right time, but not in the right way. Compliance is one of the biggest factor which we discuss a lot today. Making sure that we are following up with the policies, for example, GDPR. And data encryption is the factor, encrypting the data which is there and making sure that we are, safeguarding the PI data. Because if the customer is trusting us with the businesses, then we have to make sure that we are handling the data in a right way and in an encrypted way. And the last one is multi-factor authentication, implementing MFA to make sure that we have a defense in depth, an extra layer for security for all the APIs, all the access controls that we have in place. With that, I would like to conclude this session. I think we are anyways on time, but I'm still here to take some questions. If you have any, I can see that we have 3 to 4 questions which are there. Okay, so I think this is pretty much on the presentation part. Yes, I think presentation will be shared by the chapter leads.
We will share. Actually, you have shared the PPT. Right. We will share with everyone.
Correct.
Yeah. Thanks, Kamal. Yeah.
So just to summarize, and there are also some of the books that you can read if you want to grow more in terms of cloud security, right? And we have some of the last book that I read was from Michael Kavis. It's called Architecting the Cloud, Designing Decisions for Cloud Computing and Service Models, where he's talking a bit about SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. So all these things are there. This is something what I can refer you guys if you want to have, more in-depth knowledge on these things. I tried to cover a lot in 2 hours, but I think still at the end we ran a short on for a few minutes. So sorry for taking some more time on this. And if you have any questions, if you like to connect with me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and definitely we can have a short chat on any of the topics that you have that you'd like to discuss. And definitely, if there are some questions, you can also ping in the chat, and we can discuss that as well.
Thanks,
So I can see
yeah.
I can see one question from Karan. So how to handle DOS attacks targeting cloud, right? Yes. So for each and every cloud provider, we have different countermeasures in place, which are actually looking at the network calls that are coming in, and also trying to analyze whether those calls are actually coming up from a normal user, or those are coming up from some kind of different IPs who are having some kind of set patterns, right? So for this, what you can do, you can also use some of the tools that are given to you by the cloud providers, or for your research, you can also create some of your own tools, and along with that tools, you can also create some rabbit holes, right? So that means if you see a pattern that is coming up, and I want that my business is running fine, then I can divert those patterns, those calls to a rabbit hole, which will be giving some kind of response to the attacker that, okay, maybe the server is down now. It's 500, right? It's internal server error or something. And now the attacker might have a perspective that, okay, now the system is not working fine. That means he is able to achieve his goals, right? But actually, what you did, your business is running intact, but you are navigating the the calls to a different server, which is actually acting as a rabbit hole. So if you are into CTFs, right, or if you are doing some kind of machines in Hack the Box or other stuff from CTF perspective, you'll be able to see a lot of things about this. And from my point of view, using the vendor tools is definitely a good idea, but creating something own and creating something unique is also something what I would prefer to do. I hope that answered your question, Karan. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, thanks, Kamal. It's a fantastic session. A couple of information, those who are joining from other chapter, definitely you will able to upload your CP. But from a Bangalore chapter point of view, we have been uploading your CP, to your account, and you are able to see that. Till today, the last CP, the last in-person session on the humanizing IT, we have uploaded for you. So one thing you should take care when you register for the CPE, you should clearly mention your email ID. You should have the same email ID you should be used, which is with the chapter record. That you should take care. If that is, and our chapter ID, your membership ID is correctly mentioned, this will be uploaded in another 2-3 days. You don't need to worry. It will be it will be uploaded to your portal as well. Those who are non-Bangalore chapter, yeah, you can manually upload it, and for the auditing proof, you come back to us. We will be able to give the detail in writing for that you have uploaded. But otherwise, this was a good session. I think a good round of virtual applause for an excellent session, Kamal. This was this is very insightful, and I think securing the cloud strategy for safer digital future. We did the similar kind of session in the past, but you have done an end-to-end covering from the importance of cloud security to some of the case studies. This was extremely engaging and collaborative. That's what I seen that. I believe that I will able to share this the feedback. So do feedback. Sure. Your mentee survey I have pasted here. Please give your feedback so that Kamal will able to know how his session is that and how you are really enjoying the session. So last but not the least, so I thank you for all ISACA members who attend the session. We have 170 to 180 people throughout this session, and it was a fantastic and some essential key takeaway from this session. Kamal, for you, we will have a token of appreciation from our chapter, and we will sharing to our home address. And thank you.
Thanks, Ras.
Oh yeah, thank you. So finally, join our community day and upcoming in-person CP towards the end of October. See you until then. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.